So for the statement of financial position, as we mentioned, we have three components. See how it mirrors the accounting equation, like I mentioned before: assets, liabilities, and net assets, which acts as functionally as equity. Now, as I mentioned, when we saw the statement, we have net assets with donor restrictions and net assets without donor restrictions. Now, it's not just assets, right? You're not necessarily just always given cash. You might be given a building which has value as well as has a mortgage. So net assets, asset of the building minus the liability of the mortgage. So part of net assets of a not-for-profit entity subject to donor-imposed restrictions. Again, maybe it's specifically to build a baseball field. If you're a college, it's to donate to, it's for any specific purpose that the entity exists for. Net assets without donor restrictions. This is part of net assets of a not-for-profit entity not subject to donor-imposed restrictions. These are going to be just cash or any sort of assets given that you can do whatever you want with. Now, again, remember, these become these. Net assets with donor restrictions become without donor restrictions once something's fulfilled. So if you're given a building and the donor says, use this building 1 year for accounting students, and then after that, do what you want with it, well, we would transfer it after 1 year if we fulfill our end of the bargain, if we provide it to accounting students, to net assets without donor restrictions. Lastly, as I mentioned, for our exam, we'll try to mess with your head. Board designated funds, so the board of directors, we don't care about them. These funds are still without donor restrictions. Now, if a question specifically says, which money are board designated funds? Yeah, I mean, it's not a term you'll see like classification wise, but if it specifically asks like what funds are restricted by the board, sure, you can answer that question, and that's not trying to trick you. But if it says which assets are donor restricted, the board of directors is totally irrelevant. We don't care what they say or they think. We are only going to care about the donor.